And joining us right now, the handsome, the talented, debonair John Canzano, johncanzano.com, all courtesy of Zeke's Pizza, Zeke'sPizza.com. My apologies. I'll take people behind the curtain.
It's okay.
I texted John. I said, hey, are you there? I don't see you. Usually you pop on like a few minutes before 10:45, and you're like, yeah, I'm here, you idiot. I realized in the green room I didn't have it like all the way scrolled up. I couldn't see you. So you know what user error, E1.
I was wondering why you kept asking questions. I was like, he must, because I've been there. I've been there. Yeah, you know, I've been there. And wondering why that wasn't a thing.
My fault. My fault entirely. All right, Zeke'sPizza.com brings you John every single week. His time is valuable, so I'll stop screwing around. JohnCanzano.com is the website to go read all of his fabulous work. Radio show, The Bald-Faced Truth down there in Portland, Oregon, 750 The Game. And, of course, follow John on X, John Canzano, BFT, on Blue Sky at John Canzano. All right, well, we got a lot to cover.
Yeah.
You're going to be at the national championship game, correct?
Correct. I'll be there.
This is going to be – what do you think the ratings for this thing is going to be? You got two blue bloods, like Mount Rushmore football programs playing in this thing.
Yeah, and look, it's not going head-to-head with NFL games like some of the other semifinals were, and you don't have some of the small market teams like Boise State being in that opening round New Year's Eve game. This is Monday night. It's the whole stage. It's Ohio State. I think on the downside, I think most of us expect Ohio State to continue to play well and win this game. And if they do, there could be a lot of TVs that turn off during the game. But I think Marcus Freeman and Notre Dame, like they've earned their way there. And, we all should note neither one of these teams would have been in a 4-team playoff. They wouldn't have made it. We said it for years with the NFL. We pointed at the Chiefs last year. Oh, they were in the wild card round, and look, they got there, and nobody disputes it. So college football finally getting with it. And, of course, the SEC panicking because 2 years in a row they don't have a team in the championship game. But, you got to earn your way there now.
It's great. I just think it's weird with Notre Dame. I think the majority of the country despises them, right? Because what's the joke with Notre Dame fans? They're also Duke fans, they're Cowboy fans, they're Laker fans. Marcus Freeman has made them a fabulous story. I think has made them likable. Everyone's kind of talked about this the last week or two, but he has made them likable.
Especially when you compare them to Ohio State. In the money that Ohio State's spending. Now, I covered Notre Dame as a beat reporter in 1998, 1999. Bob Davie was the coach at the time. They went to a Gator Bowl that year. What shocked me, being a guy who was like a West Coast guy who was in the Midwest, in South Bend, Indiana, really for the first time, and seeing the Notre Dame fan base, was that it wasn't the typical affluent West Coast Notre Dame fan. This was a Rudy, blue-collar, wearing gloves to the stadium with the fingers cut off. The fans of Notre Dame football are very different. The fans who tailgate and show up. It was a little shocking to me because I was used to the Notre Dame fan who had never been to a Notre Dame game, didn't know anything about Notre Dame, and just loved the colors and Lou Holtz and Tim Brown. So it was really eye-opening to see that blue-collar Midwestern fan who was in the state of Indiana.
Yeah, I mean, you've been there. I mean, South Bend is not like a destination place where you want to live.
No, it's beautiful. I mean, it's beautiful, and Touchdown Jesus as advertised. But great. I just remember being in the press box the very first time that I was covering a game, and I looked down at the fans, and it wasn't who I thought it was. I thought it was going to be like the 49er fans, right, with the tablecloths that are cloth in the parking lot, tailgating and drinking wine and eating cheese. It wasn't. It was this real blue-collar bratwurst, gloves and beanie caps crowd.
They are heavy favorites. I mean, Ohio State is big-time favorites in this one. How does Notre Dame, you think, you pull off the upset?
You got to stop them at the line of scrimmage. The back end has to be really good. Oregon found that out as Ohio State went down the field. You got to make Will Howard uncomfortable. But I think the ultimate thing for Notre Dame is it's got to play clean. You cannot make mistakes. You cannot turn the ball over. Can't do what Texas did as it was driving in to potentially tie the game. And then it's going to need a turnover or two itself. The Notre Dame team, the problem that they have on the offensive side is that they're kind of limited. They don't really throw the ball down the field. What they did against Texas was really a surprise. They want to get in a tug of war with you. And so, they can't let Ohio State run away from them. And look at Ohio State since about week 4 of the season. It's like they give up 14 points, 17 points, 10 points, 7 points. Texas got 14 on them. Oregon getting above 20 was a real outlier, but we all know that was kind of against some third and fourth string guys late in the game. So, Notre Dame's got to get to 20 points in this game, and it has to play clean.
Changes that you'd like to see. You talked about this. Someone asked you in your Monday mailbag, if you were the commissioner or you could run college football, how would you change it? So we've seen this first year of it.
Yeah.
There's been some pros and some cons, obviously, but looking at it, how would you change it in the future?
Well, I'll tell you what I would do, and then I'll tell you what I think is going to happen. So what I would do is I would follow Division II, FCS. I would look at what they're doing. They're having great success having the higher seeded team host the games, all the way to the championship game in Frisco, Texas, home seed, high seed. So I would go to 16, and I would say no buys for anybody. Conference champions, top 5 highest rate top conference champions get in the tournament, but it doesn't get you a bye. It doesn't impact seeding. It just gets you a berth to the dance, like the NCAA tournament. So I would go 1 to 16, and I would eliminate the quarterfinal neutral site, eliminate the semifinal neutral site. I'd go home field throughout. It's asking too much of fans to tell them to go on the road, go to the Cotton Bowl, go to the Rose Bowl, now go to the championship game. It's just too much to ask from fans, but they'll never do it, right? And I would seed the teams just 1 through 16. The top seed being the team that the committee thinks should get there. And here's what I would have the committee be. It would be all recently retired head football coaches. Let's get the bureaucrats out of the room. Let's get the ADs out of the room. They all have dogs in the fight. Football coaches know good football. Let's have them be the selection committee. I would bring in a rep from all 16 teams after they've picked the 16, and I'd say, okay, make your case for where you should be seated. Everybody gets 5 minutes to talk about their team, just like the Hall of Fame induction ceremony process where, hey, Joe Montana, and then you sit down. Like you could do that with Oregon and Ohio State and SMU. Could have done that, and I think it would have been a really clean process. No week-to-week rankings. Get rid of the pandering every week for 2 months. It was obnoxious. I was vomiting watching the SEC and everybody pander for positions. That's what I would do. But I'll tell you, Puck, what I think they're going to do. I think they're going to do very little in 2025. They need a unanimous vote to make changes in 2025. So I talked to Greg Byrne, the Alabama AD. He thinks they can get some unanimous thought on seeding because everybody kind of looked at the seeding and said, hey, it's wrong. It's not benefiting the top seed. There's a real disadvantage here for Oregon. Ohio State and Notre Dame were both underseeded teams. Interesting that they got to the final. They had, an easier path than some others. But I think you look at seeding for 2025, I think they may adjust that and tweak that. Beyond that, the Big Ten and the SEC think they have unilateral authority in 2026 to make changes. They've said it. Hey, we think we're the gatekeeper here. So if the Big Ten and the SEC are going to make changes, I would expect they're going to try to push for automatic berths for their members. The SEC wants more teams in. The Big Ten's going to want more teams in. I think this is horrible. I think, you should get your conference champ should get in and that's it. But I think that's what they'll push for.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, you're going to devalue the regular season, right?
100%.
I mean, yeah, it's going to be really interesting. So you think so next year that remains the same, but 26, right? Then they can open it back up to make some real changes.
Yeah, because they can make changes for 25, but you need the group of 5 schools to say, okay, we're okay with that. So I expect it to be little things, little tweaks in 25. Maybe some bigger things, some bigger concepts in 2026 and beyond.
And like Boise State, like the Mountain West, not going to go along with that.
No,
like we're getting an automatic bid. So why would we change it?
Because you don't want to give up the automatic bids. But I think for 25, what they could do is they could say, hey, look, the seeding benefited nobody. Let's just seed them as they were. Agreed. Boise State still would have been a high seed, right? They were still up there in the poll and the rankings. So let's just seed them 1 through 12. And not have this top 4, thing for conference champions. And, I think some schools would go along with that because I think, they might want to have home games instead of others. And nobody's going to want to be the 1 seed in 2025. I can tell you that.
I agree with the getting it out of the neutral sites. It's terrible. I mean, it doesn't, nobody else does it this way. I don't know why. was watching the Montana State and the North Dakota State game, and they just, to your point, they just do it so right.
Yeah.
And it's such an easy thing to copy because they've been doing it for so long. And it just benefits the teams that are the higher seed. Reward them. Every level of football does it this way, except the one that's the most, well, second most popular. And as you wrote in your mailbag, and I'm all in, and we talked about it a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, road to the Rose Bowl. You play every year in the Rose Bowl.
Trademark it.
Yes, it's perfect. It's an absolute
make the Rose
solution.
Bowl. You would trump the Super Bowl in that way, because you know how they float the Super Bowl around to reward teams. Like you could become like Omaha for the College World Series in baseball. You could create this festival around Pasadena, and the Rose Bowl doesn't have to happen on January 1. You could hold another bowl game and call it the Rose Bowl on January 1 if you need a game. But you could hold this game on January 10th or 12th or whenever you need to hold it. That's your national title game, and it happens at the Rose Bowl. So I think they got to get rid of all of it. These bowl games are just meaningless to me. I can't stand them. They're so stupid. And even the ones that they're propping up there for like the quarterfinals and the semifinals. Oh, we won the Peach Bowl. No, you didn't. Yeah. I mean, that's not what you want to win, though. You don't want to win the Peach Bowl. You want to win the whole thing. I think you touched on it there, but I would just do what the NCAA does. Okay, there's one bracket that's just the playoffs. Where no more bowl games. You end up, the road to the Rose Bowl, and then the teams that didn't get in, it's NIT. Just play an NIT tournament. Well, I've heard that's been raised. Like one of the pro-union organizations that's repping some athletes has come out and said, let the bowl season be the NIT tournament.
Sure.
Create the next group of, the teams 13 through 25 or 13 through 24 or whatever you need to have them play off and play in the Vegas Bowl and the Alamo Bowl and everything else, and incentivize it by paying the players like the NBA did for their in-season tournament.
Great idea. Love it. I'm in. All in.
Maybe some of them would play.
Maybe so. Yeah, exactly right. Maybe you can get people stopped from opting out.
Here's the other thing. Those bowls that were really not great from a competitive standpoint, they still drew numbers. People like you and I were around in December watching these bowl games because what are we going to do? Watch pickleball? I mean, this was it drew numbers. ESPN got numbers there. They're not going to want to give them up.
I get it. I know. TV kind of runs everything. All right, where are we at with what's the latest with the Pac-12 Mountain West lawsuit? Where do we stand right now, John?
Well, the Pac-12 filed the lawsuit, basically alleging that the $55 million in poaching penalties was anti-competitive and illegal, and that they signed that agreement under a lot of, coercion and duress. They weren't going to have a season if they didn't agree to the scheduling. And so the Pac-12 is really trying to unwind those poaching fees. Mountain West filed a motion to dismiss. The Pac-12 filed yesterday another motion, their response to that motion to dismiss. The judge in the District Court in Northern California is supposed to look at this and rule. I had legal experts look at it. They believe that the judge is going to let this lawsuit continue and have discovery take place. They just don't think the Mountain West did enough to sort of combat it. But, wrapped up in this is that the Mountain West is using the idea or the concept of these poaching penalties to hold its conference together. It's got financial promises to UNLV and Air Force and all the other members that are based on the revenue from the poaching penalties and the revenue from exit fees. The Pac-12's legal argument is, we signed it, but we signed it under duress. And oh, by the way, it's illegal. And you are double dipping by collecting an exit fee and a poaching penalty. All of the departing Mountain West schools, interestingly, have also filed lawsuits against the Mountain West. They're really putting some high velocity legal attack on the Mountain West here. And they're really trying to force them into a settlement position where it weakens them to the point where they may not be able to hold Air Force and UNLV in the conference. So keep an eye on that.
So that's the end game, because they basically they want to force the Mountain West not to be able to collect those fees. If they don't then collect those fees, then they can't promise the guarantee money that they did to UNLV and Air Force, and then thus those two schools probably join the Pac-12.
And those two schools are getting 50%. And so what the Pac-12 could theoretically do is say, look, if they can either negotiate down the poaching fees in a settlement or evaporate them altogether, they could turn to UNLV and Air Force and go, hey, you can still get the money, but you do it by moving to our conference. There also is a question, though, Puck, of whether or not the Pac-12 even needs an eighth member. I've been talking to people about that. The NCAA says you need 8 all-sports members. The Pac-12 is at 7 plus Gonzaga. Now, who came up with the number 8? And does it still work in 2025 where some conferences have 16 members or 18 members? What is a conference anymore? And so I do think that one of the angles the Pac-12 could take while they wait for this lawsuit to unwind is they could go to the NCAA and go, look, we don't want to take you to court, but give us an extension. Give us another year to get to 8. Let us play as a 7 plus Gonzaga for a year or two. Look the other way. Let it go. Or they could take some legal action. The NCAA has not been strong in court, as we know. They lose and lose. They're bad. And so, if you take the NCAA to court and say, hey, who says there needs to be 8 members to be a conference? Why not 7 plus Gonzaga? Why does it have to be all sports? I think there's some wiggle room here for the Pac-12 if they want to explore it.
I mean, the other conferences, though, that would argue, oh, my God, we're playing in a 14, 16-team conference. You're playing in a 7-team conference, but yet you have an easier path to the playoff. You don't have to play that many people. And
that may be, that's an incentive for maybe some of those members in those other conferences to reconsider where they are. I'm sure there's some of that going on, Puck, as you look around. Like, they're not playing each other. They should probably just be divided into divisions. They're too big.
Right. Yeah.
And at some point, I talked to Mike Oresco, who's the former American commissioner, about this months ago. He said at some point you grow so big that you can't really communicate. You can't really make decisions. Once you start pushing towards 18 or 20, you're almost too big to get anything really done because there's so many views and voices in the room.
I want to go back to the lawsuit for a sec. When they signed, though, and to have this scheduling agreement with the Mountain West, I mean, they did agree not to take their teams. I mean, they did take them. I mean, isn't the Pac-12 guilty of what they're being alleged to have done by the Mountain West?
Well, the Pac-12 is saying we had no choice. We have thousands of athletes whose competition and athletic careers depended on us putting a schedule together. We signed this expressing that they believed it was illegal at the time. There was some conversation with the Mountain West at the time about whether or not it was even legal. I think the Pac-12, when it signed it, completely intended to try to wiggle out of it or negotiate out of it. But part of the argument is that it's not just anti-competitive for the Pac-12, but that it's also anti-competitive for schools like Boise State, Fresno State, Colorado State, Utah State, who departed because the schools were asked to pay exit fees and then now are facing a marketplace that has been inhibited by the poaching penalties. And so there's like a Sherman antitrust argument to be made in this. And I found it very interesting in the Pac-12's lawsuit. They talk a lot about antitrust. In the Mountain West response, they didn't really address it. And it's kind of why I expect, I talked to some legal experts. I said, is that unusual? And they said, that's what you do when you don't have a winning hand. Like, you don't want to argue that antitrust thing while you're trying to argue whether or not the lawsuit should move forward. They're saving that for another day. But I kind of expect this is going to end up somewhere in the middle. There'll be some kind of settlement. Lawyers will win, as they always do. Legal fees will be collected. But, I think the Pac-12, while this is going on, I would be really wise for them to go to the NCAA and be like, okay, we have 8 members. Who says they have to be all sports? Look at all these affiliate members that are playing all over the place. Yeah. Can they add an affiliate member in football? Can they add something else? And then Wayne Tinkle made a very interesting comment yesterday on my radio show. He said that there have been discussions with a school that would blow people's minds. Now, he's not the commissioner of the conference. He might just be recruiting. But it got me thinking about what does he mean and what school out there would blow people's minds, particularly from a basketball standpoint. Is it possible that St. Mary's and UConn or somebody else is talking about the Pac-12? I don't know, but I think there's a lot of tentacles to this that are still going to need to be settled.
When he said that, was he talking about basketball or a school that would play in all?
I had asked him, hey, what's the conference look like next year basketball wise? Like, is it a 4-bid conference? Is it a 3-bid conference with Gonzaga and San Diego State and Boise State coming in? And he said, well, basically, I'm paraphrasing, but he said, it's not yet been fully constituted. And I'm going to tell you, there have been some conversations with some schools that would blow your mind. So it may be that they're talking partnership. It may be that they're talking about adding basketball only members. I do know that St. Mary's is sitting on the sideline right now, and it's eager to be checking into this game. And St. Mary's is watching, and I think kind of hoping that UNLV is the addition, because if UNLV comes in, I think it makes a lot of sense to add St. Mary's in a basketball perspective and then call it good if you're the Pac-12.
Is this all this stuff that's going on right now? Is it delaying the media rights deal, and where are we at with that?
I don't think it's delaying it, but I think there are probably some conversations, some extra conversations that have to be happening. I am told that, it got quiet during the Christmas, during the mid-December to the end of the year. They were really focused on, the conference was really focused on talking about what sports they're going to play in 2026. Are they going to play baseball? There's like 5 baseball members. Are the baseball members going to play somewhere else? Like, they were having those conversations, but the media rights updates that they're getting are 20,000 foot views, conversations with Octagon about things going well. I still think there's a lot of to be determined there. My target is still mid-March. I think on that Thursday when they're tipping off for the NCAA tournament, we should have some clarity on the media rights front. I think that's kind of where the target is right now.
But a notable absence at the Jimmy Rogers press conference was outgoing President Kirk Schulz. Did that surprise you? Didn't surprise me.
No, but it's still weird that the university president's not in the room. I mean, we talked about this. You've got to have alignment, right? You've got to have this congruency of vision from your regents or your trustees to your president, to your AD, to your football coach. That's how it works in major college athletics. If you don't have alignment, you have problems. Washington State is out of alignment. We know that because the regents told the president to find the money, dragged his feet, didn't tell the AD, football coach left. I mean, you see the problem that develops if you don't have alignment. So Schultz not being there tells me he didn't feel welcome, tells me he doesn't feel like he's part of the future. He probably didn't want to be a distraction and get asked a bunch of questions about why he didn't talk about the money with his AD. Given in his defense, he probably was just going, this is going to become the story if I show up.
Yeah.
But it just shows you there's no alignment, Puck. You should have had a president in the room. Certainly some of the trustees were there. The AD is there. Football coach is there. It really does make what happens next very important with that presidential hire. I talked to a couple of the regents. They are moving along with that. And they told me we've got to get this right. They are definitely going to hire somebody who gets athletics.
Well, yeah, because they've got to. I mean, because if they don't, then they're just going to be left behind. I mean, the president of Oregon State gets it, and they just need to be able to find someone that will advocate for sports there at that university.
And look, it impacts your enrollment. When you have a good football team and a good brand, enrollment goes up. You can study it. Watch the enrollment at Notre Dame, Ohio State, Boise State. The playoff teams will all see upticks in enrollment. And that's money. And it's out-of-state students in particular that pay the bills, and international students that really pay the bills. So Washington State needs more people to pick Washington State. And that starts with having a good football team.
Is there a storyline or something brewing right now with the power conferences and trying to seek more control over the NCAA tournament?
Yes, they are floating a proposal that the Power Four, which is just a concept, right? The Power Four schools, the conferences, we know who they are. They would like to take control of NCAA championships. They want the money. They want the ability to negotiate with television, and they want control. I talked to the Big Sky Commissioner, Tom Wistersill, and he says, what more can they ask for? They have the authority right now. They have voices in the room right now. Like he hasn't seen the proposal, but he's like, what more do they need? Like, they already have everybody squeezed into an uncomfortable position. And I think it would be terrible. The NCAA tournament is the one thing the NCAA gets right. Don't give this to the playoff crew. Don't give this to the Power Four. Yeah. They will screw it up, and we know it.
Yeah, I just leave it alone. Stop adding teams to it. Can we? Can we get rid of the play-in games and just go 64 and just like it used to be?
Yeah.
God, it's not that hard of a concept. What do you make of Carson Beck making $4 million at Miami? Do you know, by the way, and I know it's been shot down, they say, well, it's actually $3 million. Okay. Even at $3 million, he will make more than the combined salaries this past season of Brock Purdy and Russell Wilson.
Yeah. Well, it's going to keep guys in college. They're going to take pay cuts. These guys that are getting drafted are taking pay cuts potentially, right? So, Oregon State is bringing in Malik Murphy, the Duke transfer, and I reported he's getting $1.5 million in cash. Plus there's some incentives built into the deal that, if he sticks around and he has success, he gets to share in some of the sponsorship deals that with some of the partners. So there's a lot of money here. Quarterbacks are getting them 7 figures and above. Tight ends are getting $250,000. Cover corners are getting $250,000. Oregon State has $2 million tied up in 3 players, 2 tight ends and the quarterback. They're spending. Washington State needs to start spending, Puck.
What do you think Justin Herbert would get if he were still in college?
He's a $3 million guy. I mean, maybe there's a loyalty factor and they get him for 2, but Dylan Gabriel's taking a pay cut, going to the NFL. Yeah. Cam Ward's taking a pay cut going to the NFL. These guys are going to get rookie deals, and it's a cutthroat world, but they're out earning a lot of those rookie quarterbacks.
Hey, that house settlement start in July. They'll get $20.5 million to now spend. How much, on top of that, does that take away from the NIL? Does the NIL become even stronger? I mean, some of these programs, Texas, Ohio State, will be able to spend $20.5 million from the school, but then another, I don't know, $20-30 million from the NIL?
It's going to depend how evolved your NIL collective is, because some of the schools are going to want to merge that together with the university, and they're going to say, bring it all in-house. We want to control all the money. Others are going to go, no, we think we can do it fine on our own, and the NIL collective can spend on top of the $20.5 million and sit off to the side as a real difference maker. So I think it's going to be interesting to see what they do. Right now at Oregon State, I can tell you the plan for Oregon State is the school's going to have its own revenue sharing money, and the Damnation Collective is going to operate as an independent entity off to the side. We'll find out if, the schools of Oregon State's size are going to stay that way. I expect Oregon to have Division Street be separate as well. But there are some other schools, and, it's interesting. I was looking at the collectives at Kentucky. You would expect them to be highly evolved, but there's kind of like a basketball collective that fuels Kentucky. Then there's a football collective. There's all this splintering. I think you have real problems if you're organized that way. And, and because there's only so many donors of every school.
Right.
We're going to go tap those donors on the shoulder and say, hey, we can give you some sponsorship stuff. We can give you some additional value if you support our revenue sharing. But some of those donors are, just given to collectives right now. So what happens to the money? It's going to be hit and miss, and it'll be interesting to see what wins out. The market won't lie. Maybe it's better if you're all under one umbrella. I don't know. It
should just be they just should morph the NIL into the athletic fund.
Yeah.
Just do that.
Well, it gives you the ability to have a salary cap, because when you have the Wild West of who knows who's behind the Boulevard Collective at SMU,
right?
It's Boss Hogg, right? We all know he's sitting there in a white cowboy hat and Roscoe, that whole thing's going on. And Phil Knight's over at Oregon behind Division Street. So, yeah, I mean, I think ultimately what happens is athletes collectively bargain, and we have a cap of some kind, and maybe that cap is $20.5 million.
Yeah. Real quick, Deion to Dallas. I mean, I know it's not college football, but it does affect college football because he would be leaving Boulder. What do you think? You think that's going to happen?
I think Deion is one of these guys that he's like a shark. He needs to keep swimming. He needs a new target. He needs something new and fresh. He needs something new to focus on. And, if he stays in one place too long, he sort of wilts. So I think Deion goes to the NFL. I think it's a new challenge. He needs to keep going. And his kid has never played for anybody but him. So not in the last, 10 or 12 years. So I think it'd be really an interesting position for Shedeur to be in if his dad's not the head coach. So I think Deion, he's the baddest club parent in America.
Yeah, well, it'll be fascinating to watch and to see where he goes next.
It's not boring, but
no, it's not boring, not boring at all. All right, what do you got? What do you got cooking right now up at JohnCanzano.com? What should we be looking forward to? And by the way, go there and sign up because this guy is just kicking ass left and right. But what do you got in the pipeline?
I wrote today about the Pac-12's in Mountain West skirmish that's going on and what's really at stake. UNLV is wrapped in the middle of it. Monday mailbags up. Later in the week, obviously, I'm headed to Atlanta. I'll go where the stories are. I'm really interested in Chip Kelly and how happy he is. I'm going to try to get to Chip and talk with him a little bit about his time at Ohio State. But all of that, I'll go where the stories are, Puck, so you know that.
All right. You're the best, and we'll talk to you next week.
Sounds good, buddy. Thank you.
There he is, John Canzano. Follow him on Twitter, John Canzano BFT, Blue Sky John Canzano. And again, read all of his work up at johncanzano.com. Again,